Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here today. I appreciate this opportunity through the Georgia Chamber. What a wonderful crowd and a great opportunity to talk to these folks. First and foremost, these seats where we are not indicative where we stand politically. So I want you to know that as we begin today. We'll start off by getting just an opening statement or comment, if we could. First with Senator Isakson, if you'd say hello to the crowd.
Well, hello to everybody. Kenny B., thank you for doing this. I enjoy being on your show a lot during the course of the year. You know, for 22 years, I ran a Georgia business. For a year, I was chairman of the Cobb Chamber of Commerce. I was on the Georgia Chamber Board for, I think, 27 years. I know the solution to America and Georgia's unemployment problems and getting out of what's been a very protracted recession is right in this room. But I know the anchor that drags you is a government that regulates too much and taxes too much. And so I'm dedicating my time this year, as I always do, to try and have reasonable but fair regulation. You know, you can mitigate risk, but when you try and eliminate it, you suppress business and there is no capital investment. I'm here to work for what got me to where I am, and that's the American free enterprise system, and I'm honored to be with you today.
Thank you, Senator. Congressman Price.
Thanks, Kenny. Great to be with you all today. Thank you ever so much. Certainly the economy and jobs are the #1 issue across this great country. But I want to echo what Senator Chambliss said, always remembering the military. We lost 30 Navy SEALs this weekend, and I ask you to always remember them. Say a little prayer for them and for their families and for the military men and women who are in this room and across our country who allow us the opportunity to live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Now, I know the Senate's been really quiet. The House has been a little bouncier of late for obvious reasons virtually all the time. What we did as we approached this challenge that we have right now in terms of our economy and most recently the debt ceiling debate that I know is front and center on your minds, is to lay out some principles. And the principles that were laid out by our speaker were that we ought not increase taxes because increasing revenue in chase of ever-increasing spending is just the wrong thing to do. A little side note, though, it's important to know that we are for tax reform. We're vibrant tax reform. We believe if you broaden the base and lower the rates and you close those loopholes, which is what we did in our budget earlier this spring, that you actually bring about a tax system that allows businessmen and women across not just this state but this country to thrive once again. We were for closing loopholes before closing loopholes was cool. You got to remember that. Secondly, we said that we wouldn't increase the debt ceiling by more than the reduction in spending, and we stuck to those principles. But the little secret in the bill that was passed that I want to share with you is what I believe to be so important, and I know you do too, and that is structural change in Washington has to occur in order for us to stop the kind of crazy spending that's been going on. And the structural opportunity for change that we see in this bill is a vote on a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution in both the Senate and the House between October 1st and December 31st of this year. I believe that is the key. Regardless of the numbers and the decreasing spending, regardless of what we do when we get back in September, that is the key, a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, to making certain that we never find ourselves in this situation again. So I'm honored to be with you today. Thank you for what you do in your community and all across this great state every single day to create jobs and make our communities strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's begin the conversation with the debt ceiling. It's forever etched in the minds of Americans now, debt ceiling and where we are. Senator, start with you. If there is a victory in all of this, is it that we are now going to really seriously take a look at slashing federal spending?
Well, there's some key things that happened in the debt ceiling vote. First of all, for the first time in history, the debt ceiling increase is tied to commensurate cuts in spending. And I think everybody needs to understand no president or Republican or Democrat in the future will ever come to Congress again to raise the debt ceiling without knowing he or she is going to have to cut in spending to match that increase. That was a major step forward. As Tom said, the balanced budget amendment is critical. Cut, cap, and balance was a great commitment to do what we structurally need to do in this country. The $2.2 trillion, quite frankly, wasn't enough, but it was a first step. And I think what's happened this past week, and particularly on Monday in the markets and with standards, standards downgrading us, is a bow is sent across the bow of Congress. And I think the committee of 12, which is being appointed as we speak, and I think will have to be in place by the end of next week, realizes that failure is not an option. We have to put our nose to the grindstone, our shoulder to the grindstone. We need to find the cuts to make that $2 trillion now, and remember, it's a down payment on greater cuts that need to come in the future.
Congressman, as far as the victory in all this, is it the fact that we're going to take a serious look at cutting that spending?
Yeah, I wouldn't categorize anything that we did last week as a victory at all. As Johnny says, this is a first step, and it's an important first step. But it is clearly not enough, and everybody in this room knows that it's not enough. The kind of numbers that we need to be talking about are the kind that actually decrease the spending curve, lower that spending curve so you get to a balanced budget and put us at a place where we can begin to pay off and ultimately pay off our debt. The good news is that there's a window of opportunity to be able to accomplish that. And we've proven that with hard, cold numbers in our budget that we passed earlier this spring through the House of Representatives. The Senate, I'm sorry to say, didn't take it up, but it's important to appreciate that we can still get our country back on a path so we can balance the budget, pay off the debt, and allow the private enterprise system that works so well and has allowed us to become the greatest nation in the history of the world to thrive. We don't need to put the government in charge in order for the country to thrive. In fact, that tends to work counter to the private sector and the country thriving.
Given the conversation of the last several months with the debt ceiling and now what happened yesterday on the Dow, how do we start telling Americans that we're going to start seeing some jobs added in this economy? Congressman?
Well, sadly, I would say, Kenny, that we're not going to see significant amount of jobs created until Washington institutes the right policy. You know, the people kept asking me over the past couple of years, when are we going to turn this thing around? When are we going to turn it around? And everybody out in this audience knows that in their businesses, you can't turn around structural problems unless you make structural change. And that's what has to happen. So until we get the right policies in place, then I'm concerned that we will not be able to turn around the unemployment rate, decrease the unemployment rate. The good news is that there are wonderful solutions, positive solutions that we can embrace and ought to embrace. Requires leadership in both parties, in both chambers, and at the other end of 1600, at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, so that we can come together and move forward positively.
Is this the new norm? 10.2, 11% unemployment, Senator?
Not at all. The new norm needs to be a government that doesn't overregulate the private sector. There are two companies in the audience today, Delta Airlines and Boeing Aircraft, that I want to talk about for just a second, because this administration has talked about bringing jobs back to America, but just 3 weeks ago, the chief counsel for the National Labor Relations Board, on behalf of the administration, sued Boeing Aircraft to prohibit them from opening a brand new plant in South Carolina to build the 787 Dreamliner because it's a right-to-work state, saying that they're penalizing Washington, where they build and have 4,800 jobs or more, the 787 also. That was just wrong. You don't have a business make hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, hire thousands of South Carolinians, and then at the drop of a hat, sue them because they happen to be in a right-to-work state. Secondly, a great airline, Delta Airlines, when they come under the National Mediation Board, NMB. I happen to have oversight over NMB. When the two new Democratic appointees of this administration were appointed there, they were asked point blank, are you going to change the threshold for unionization in transportation unions? Absolutely not. 11 days later after their confirmation, they changed the 75-year-old precedent for requiring 50% plus one of all those to be unionized to vote for it rather than a simple majority, to try and make it easier to unionize a shop that had never been union. Those type of suppressions on the free enterprise system are what keeps us from expanding jobs and opportunity in America today.
That's a nice segue into the overregulation of business today. Many businesses are upset about Sarbanes-Oxley, is still reeling from that. Folks with the Dodd-Frank, talk about overregulation of business and how much pressure it puts on businesses here in Georgia. Congressman Price?
Well, it puts huge pressure on businesses, and it's not just the regulations that have been offered to date. Folks know likely that there were over 600 regulations that were promulgated out of this administration just in the month of July. So if you're in business across this state or anywhere in this country and you're thinking about expanding or you're thinking about starting up a new business, you don't know what the playing field's going to be when you begin to move in that direction. So whether it's in healthcare, which has huge regulation and more coming out every single day, whether it's in the area of energy with the EPA overreaching in incredible ways, whether it's the NLRB, as Senator Isakson mentioned, on and on and on. The uncertainty that's out there in the market says to businesses, large and small, don't do anything right now. You've just got to wait until there's more certainty, so more predictability in the market. And that's exactly what's happening. This is all very predictable. but it's also the opportunity for us to turn things back. I would call on the President to put a moratorium on any new regulations for the next 18 months. You want to send a wonderful message to the business community to stop promulgating regulations right now and say we won't do any more, at least until January 2013.